You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn connects you with experts from all over the world to help you take charge of your career, your business, and your life. Rap along with us. Visit drjacalyn.com to learn how to become a guest or a sponsor. And now, the doctor is in.
Hello and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're so happy to have you with us today. You are watching Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, the Underdog Show. I'm your host, executive producer, director, and broadcast engineer. And with me today, as always, is the star of our show, Doctor Who of Business. It's Ben Shai.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, so good to see you again. Our second show for today. I just want people to know that if they missed it, you did two fabulous presentations on a better you, lessons from the best coaches, consultants, and trusted advisors. So after the show, head over to our YouTube channel, Dr. Jacalyn LLC, to watch. So Doctor Who of Business is an author, an actor, presenter, public speaker, legend, all over Clubhouse, helping people every single day. He's an entrepreneur who helps people build their businesses with a strategy for blueprinting, which I think is amazing. So, Doctor Who, what else should our audience know about you?
Really nothing else, but I will say this, that once in your life, you'll find her, someone who turns your heart around, and next thing you know, you're closing down the town. Wake up and she's still with you, even though you've left her way half down. And why am I saying this? Because our guest today is someone who was quite a sports person, suffered from Lyme Disease, which changed her life around a little bit. And because she's got such a positive mentality, even though there was all this tiredness and issues that the doctors didn't even see, she's still been able to work with it and turn it around. And why did I mention the song? Because she's from New York.
Woo! I love it.
So please introduce the amazing Deborah Roth.
Deborah Roth, live from New York. Welcome. Woo!
What a fun intro. Thank you, Doctor Who.
We've got a couple of comments from our buddy Fraser Ramsey. Good day. Hello. And Ben is a rock star. Yes, Fraser, he certainly is. So our rock star today is Deborah Roth. We're so happy to have you with us.
Great to be here.
Deborah Roth star.
Yep.
And I just want to announce, because I think this is kind of interesting, and we're not going to go into specifics, but life is very fortuitous sometimes. Deborah was booked on the show. She didn't actually book herself. She was booked by someone else and had no idea she was coming on the show. And she was already busy, by the way. She already had something else going on, and she was good enough to rearrange her schedule so that she could be here today. So thank you, Deborah.
It was a lovely birthday present. We connected on my birthday, which was on Monday. So wonderful to be here.
So, Deborah, you are multifaceted. I love the fact that you're a minister. You're also a coach. You have your own company, and spirited living is something that really resonates with you. Can you share more about that?
Definitely. And I would probably say, when we head into my Lyme disease story, you'll certainly see why the spirited part has been essential and kind of, I can't say moving past it because I still have it and there's a knee replacement in my future. I'm just trying to put it off as long as I can. But spirited living, I'm so glad I claimed the name when I left the corporate world and started my own business in the 90s, which was a huge transitional year for me, a decade for me. And I started my business after getting trained at Coach U. It was then Coach U. I got my master's in psychology. And I claimed when we weren't so hot on the internet, I mean, I was still mailing my master's thesis and my master's papers, through the mail in the mid 90s. And I claimed spirited living because I knew that I wanted to do something that no matter how people found me, whether it was because they wanted to work on relationships, whether they were in the middle of a career or life transition, because the 90s was one huge continuous, probably starting with Lyme disease in the late 80s, huge continuous life transition. But no matter how they found me, I wanted to be sure that they knew that the work that we did was going to be, the foundation was going to be a very strong commitment to the mind, body, spirit interaction. And my master's thesis was on the power of ritual. So the ritual piece means that that's why I got ordained as an interfaith minister, so I could do the coolest life transition ritual there is, I think, which is getting married. So I've married hundreds and hundreds of people. But it all comes back.
Which was your favorite?
Say it again?
I mean, which person was your favorite person that you married?
Oh, I have so many stories.
So I'm teasing you.
I couldn't even pick one.
It's an English joke because you said I've married so many people. So I was just saying.
I've been married for 40 years, which is an accomplishment in itself nowadays. But
Yes.
It really is.
only one of him. He's very unique.
Can we share a little bit about what your life was like before you found you had Lyme disease and that moment when you discovered that you had it?
It's very vivid, and it was now almost 35 years ago, which blows my mind away to think that. It was in 1988, and really kind of before the big media blitz about Lyme disease. That really happened the next year or maybe later that summer. And I was a marathon runner. I had 2 young kids. At that point, let's see, I'd been married for, I don't know, 7, 8 years. We had a 5-year-old at that point and a 2.5-year-old. I was working full time. And I, whenever we would go on the way in the summer, we would run in these beautiful places. I actually met my husband running in Riverside Park in New York City. So in those days, we ran everywhere together. And I ran through this beautiful meadow north of the city in a place called Croton-on-Hudson, and had a wonderful run. And a couple months, and then noticed when I came back that I had this funny ring rash on my leg. Nobody was really talking about Lyme, and I just thought, oh, it's a spider bite. I did have the presence of mind to call the friend we were visiting and say, because I knew her son had actually had Lyme, and I described it to her, and she said, oh no, Jake's rash looked like blah, blah, blah. So I forgot about it. And several months later, that was in September, October, and the following June, my knee, only my right knee, started swelling up like a balloon. And we figured it had something to do with running. I'd go to see the orthopedist. He'd shoot me with, he'd drain it out and then shoot me full of cortisone. And I'd literally run for another month. And then it would swell up again. And I don't know that I had other symptoms. What this thing that they call Lyme arthritis is, it's a 3rd stage Lyme symptom. And I said to Dr. Who when we were talking, I had 2 little kids and I was working full time, and I had this great full life. So of course, and I live in New York City. So of course I was tired all the time. Looking back on it, I may have been a little bit more tired. That's also one of the symptoms of Lyme. So after I did have 2 different Lyme tests done, and they came back negative. And my knee was continuing to swell. Then I went to the hospital for joint diseases, and they did orthoscopic surgery. Didn't find anything except for inflammation that was, causing the swelling. And so they then sent the test to Stony Brook, which at that time, I don't know if that's still the case, they were like the top place for Lyme disease. And apparently it came back so full of Lyme that they used it as a demonstration to their interns and stuff. So they immediately put me on all kinds of stuff for that. I was on IV antibiotics. Now, mind you, I was still hobbling up and down subway stairs to get to my job, which was downtown at that point, on crutches, still with these little kids. And it was a challenge, but you can see I'm kind of an upbeat person and just soldiered through. There was a point, however, when they were all these anti-inflammatories and all the stuff that they were giving me, there was a warning sign. And they said, we should probably take you off some of this stuff. And so they took me off everything. And at that, I love how the universe works. At that moment, really, I think within that week, someone told us about a wonderful acupuncturist. And I'd never done acupuncture. I'd been curious about it. Long story short, I saw her a couple days a week for probably a year. And she is really why I'm walking again. She would not only, put needles in my knee, but she'd do it up and down all the meridians, up and down that leg. And then she put them wherever you put them in Chinese medicine, where my immune system points were. So that got me moving again. And I did physical therapy. And so all that to say that there are ways that, and anybody who's been through any sort of, kind of traumatic health thing like that, you find ways around it. We went to Disney World, and I saw Disney World with our kids from a wheelchair. And our then 2-year-old sat on my lap. He thought it was great. We got to skip all the lines. When we went to Epcot several years later, I think they had figured out the wheelchair skipping line thing. So we had to wait in lines, even though I was in a wheelchair. So I don't know that I could sit here and tell you all the upsides. I would obviously love not to have this. I don't run anymore. However, I rollerbladed for years until I was almost 50, I think, because that's the kind of thing. As long as I didn't have to bend my knee or put a lot of stress on my knees, that was okay. So rollerblading was great. It was just kind of gliding. And Central Park, for anybody that knows New York, they close the 6-mile, loop around the drive, and there's big hills. And I do my crouch, and back when more people were rollerblading in the 90s. And at some point, I think I fell once or twice, and I thought, okay, even with all my gear on, and even though I was going slowly, and I just said, okay, I'm not supposed to do this anymore. So I started walking, and now today, 30 plus years later, almost 35 years later, I do sort of a mix of yoga, Pilates, and bar, but I do it every day. And some of my poses look funny because my right knee, only bends 90 degrees. I could very easily do a yoga pose, but I won't freak out and show you that it just does not go more than that. And it also doesn't straighten all the way. So when I do things, those of you that are familiar with yoga, when I do things like child's pose or anything that requires you to sit back on your heels, my butt's going to be up in the air. But I've learned to work around it. And frankly, and I would really say this to anyone, if you got the ability to do it, I am convinced that all of that non-ballistic exercise that I do, not to mention the spiritual component of yoga, I think really has helped me delay having a knee replacement. Any orthopedist who's ever looked at it has said, oh yeah, you had the knee of someone 10 years older than you, and there's it's going to have to be replaced at some point. And I really believe that everything that I've been able to do, obviously there's some things I can't, has strengthened all the muscles around it, and have really helped. When you have an injury, your whole body gets thrown off. I mean, my left hip isn't in great shape. Sometimes I feel like I may have to have a hip replacement before I have a knee replacement, because sometimes that bothers me more than my knee. But as I said to Dr. Who, on a day-to-day basis, I've got my knee up right now because I just walked for about 3 miles with a dear friend. But on a day-to-day basis, it really doesn't hurt. And there are times when, and it used to happen, I haven't had it happen in a year because I've been taking a new anti-inflammatory nutrient, not even a drug, that I think has made a difference. But every several months, up until about a year ago when I started taking this thing called PEA, my knee, just out of the blue, I couldn't connect it with what I'd eaten or with the weather. My knee would just get horrible, and I could barely walk. I'd have to sleep with a pillow between my legs, and it would just, no matter what I did, I would actually take Advil, which I hate to do, but even that wouldn't help. And think, now it's time for that knee replacement, but that hasn't happened.
Yeah, if I can just rewind back a little bit, because my head's a bit overloaded now.
I know, I did a big brain dump there.
So when you first thought, you didn't really know about it, but one of the first signs around target on the body.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, we're having some technical issues, Ben.
What?
Okay,
Yeah.
that was loud and clear. Try again.
So I'm guessing that you had this challenge, and one kind of aspects of that challenge was that mark on your body, but your test came back negative. So one thing that I've taken is that you persevered with finding what was going on with your body, whereas other people would just believe what the doctor said. For example, my uncle, he died of cancer, but the doctors told him he just had pneumonia, right? And so they believed that he just had a cold, a really bad cold, and he'd get better. So, but here's the thing: if he persevered, they would have caught it earlier. The same with you. You persevered, even though they'd said that the tests are negative. So that's really one thing I'm interested in. The second thing is that you've lived through walking around on crutches and a wheelchair. How long was that for? Just
Probably, wow. Probably maybe for 2 years.
all right. So here you are in crutches on a wheelchair, but I'm guessing because of your belief and your faith, you had faith that you would recover, or even if you didn't recover, you were believing that, look, this is why God's put me in this for some reason. Maybe I can connect with other people going through this particular disease and reach out to them. Would that?
No, I would say when you're in the middle of it, it's really hard to think that way. And
Right.
yeah, and as I started to come out of the worst of it, because in the middle of it, all I could think was, oh my God, is this the rest of my life? Is this is how I'm going to live the rest of my life, is hobbling around? It's terrifying. And I don't know at that point that I had any awareness, even though I consider, and I have always considered myself a pretty spiritual person, that there was any sort of divine plan at play. I'm always looking at that. Yes. But I think in those moments and those, kind of darkest days, that was not the thing that drove me. It was more, I want to figure out a way. It was almost like, I don't care if there's a divine plan. If this is part of the plan, I don't like it. And I'm going to figure out a way that I can live my life as fully as I can. And then afterwards, I can look back and see some of the things that came out of this. I probably never would have rollerbladed. I probably would still be running. And my yoga practice, which I did for many, many years before I started doing, pulling in Pilates and bar. And I pulled them in during one of those periods when I thought, that my knee was deteriorating rapidly. And I thought, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to do yoga. So I hear what you're saying, Dr. Who, but in those moments, I just encourage people to hang on, and even if you can't, in the thick of it, if you can't find the greater reason, afterwards, I think is when those things become clearer to us.
Yeah. Can you just,
Deborah,
before we go to the break and everything, because I'd like to share that Dr. J has an online yoga program as well. But also, could you just share overall, because you said you don't feel that your symptoms was maybe as bad as others, but what overall is the worst kind of symptoms you can have?
Yeah, that's a great question. In the middle of that, and even in the thick of it, I could recognize, I considered myself lucky, because at that point, I knew people who had this whole neurological response, or their entire body ached, or they got Bell's palsy in their face. There's all kinds of neurological implications to Lyme. I've always thought it was bizarre. And frankly, I've never heard of anyone with Lyme that had my very specific symptom. I didn't have, that was the only joint that was affected is my right knee. And I know people who had total systemic whether it was pain in their whole bodies or whether it was pain in joints. So there's so many, and it's interesting because I think very shortly after the Lyme thing, it was on the cover of Time magazine and all that stuff. Within a year after I was diagnosed, and then shortly after that, I think AIDS came in and kind of pushed Lyme, rightly so. I mean, we needed to learn a lot about AIDS, obviously, to get where we are today. But it's still out there. I mean, there's still people that are dealing with Lyme. But at least we have more of an awareness around it.
Right. That's brilliant. Dr. J, you wanted to ask a question.
Yes, a comment and a question. First of all, having taught aerobics for years way back and being a runner, I ended up on crutches a few times, and that is hard work. It's so hard on your hands. It's hard. It's so hard. So I can't even imagine for 2 years or so. My question is, you were misdiagnosed and went through all these things in between, and then you got the diagnosis. How angry were you? Or what feelings did you have that maybe if they had diagnosed it back then, this, and this would have been different? Or didn't you feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, my symptoms were nothing got worse because they didn't find it with the first test. Maybe emotionally, psychologically. I mean, and keep in mind, there wasn't, I don't think, this was 30 years ago, so I'd have to reconstruct when those tests were and that kind of thing. It all happened pretty quickly. I mean, I now know that funny, what I thought was a spider bite in the fall of '88 was Lyme. I didn't have symptoms until May. And then that summer was when I did all the cortisone, draining, all that stuff. And then the following spring was when we went to, the following spring was when we went to Florida to Disney World, and I was in a wheelchair. So I would say it was probably 6 months to a year from the first couple misdiagnoses. And I guess, again, I'm a little Mary Sunshine. I give everybody the benefit of the doubt until they, whack me in the gut. And I knew that there was a lot, even at those early days, that there was a lot we didn't know about Lyme. So I couldn't feel anger about a test. It wasn't the doctor's fault because that the test was a false negative. I mean, there were lots of false negatives then. I mean, we hear about false negatives and false positives with COVID now too. And I don't know that that's anyone's fault. That's just kind of so I just kind of took it in stride, if that answers the question.
Yeah, that's kind of weird because as we know, COVID has similar kind of impact on people's body, like feeling very tired all the time, but perhaps without the neurological impact, unless you're doing long COVID and so on. So, Dr. J, did you want to go for?
Yes, we're going to go for a break. I think it's interesting that Facebook sent a message that our show is being muted in certain countries because of the music we're playing, but we haven't played any music.
No,
and it even lists the song that's supposedly playing. So sorry, Facebook, but that's not the case. But now we are going to play music. So for our break, we are going to spotlight an artist from the UK. Her name is ILO. And her song is Heroes in Disguise. She's represented by Licorice Dragon Records. And we will be listening to her on the break. So here we go. You can get her music over on Apple, iTunes. ILO is in the house.
Picture this. A life where you can leave your pain. A life where you can start again somehow. Picture this. A vision that can change a prayer. Happy heart that's always there in the now. So don't be afraid. As long as we're still here, disguise. Picture this, losing everything you got, never having had a lot, but holding on and on and on. Don't be afraid to dream, 'cause we are so much closer than it seems. We can be anything larger than life, rise up from the ground. We can fall down over 10,000 times, then turn it all right back around. We never imagined how good life can be, but inside you and me, we can see past these ghosts in the mirror. Yeah. We can be anything larger than life, rise up from the ground. We can fall down over 10,000 times, then turn it all right back around. We never imagined how good life can be, but inside you and me, we can see past these ghosts in the mirror. Heroes in disguise. Heroes in disguise. Heroes in disguise. Heroes in disguise. Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Hello and welcome back. We're so happy to have you with us. You are watching Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, the Underdog show, starring Doctor Who of Business, Ben Chai.
Dr. J, Doctor of the Media.
And our wonderful guest, Deborah Roth. Thank you so much. What did you think of the tune?
I am a sap, so I was in tears. I'm also a singer. I sing in a women's chorus, and half the songs I have to have to sing for a while before I can sing them without getting choked up. She's beautiful. Oh my gosh, I have to go find it.
Yes, I actually downloaded it. It's beautiful. So in our first segment, we were hearing about Deborah, the fact that she was diagnosed, or she's had Lyme disease, sorry. They're connected in a lot of ways, I think, but Lyme disease for over 30 years. She's been married for 40 years. She's in New York. She's got a great outlook. She has an issue with her knee, but she doesn't let her stop her. She's still doing her yoga, the poses that she can do. She just went for a walk with a friend. And yes, so Doctor Who, what would you like to discuss in this segment?
Well, really, I mean, Deborah has this amazing kind of perspective on what's happened to her. And so I'm very interested in other people who are going through this horrible, horrible kind of time in their lives. And what things does Deborah, even though she's only had a kind of what she says, a minor aspect compared to what other people have had. So, but I'm pretty sure she's worked with other people who've gone through Lyme disease at a much more toxic kind of impact on them.
No, I mean, that's not what I specialize in. So I'm not, I would say I share my story, and I certainly talk with people informally about it. But my work is it's interesting. My husband is a healer, and so he works with people. He tends to work, well, he does psycho-emotional healing, he tends to work with people who have more physical issues as well. For me, not so much. Yeah. So in terms of in my work, I don't really work with people who've had Lyme. I just know them personally and know, because it's something, I think I said this to you at some point, Dr. Who, that I don't read a lot about Lyme right now because.
Yeah. So Deborah, may I interrupt? I didn't mean
please.
that I didn't mean that you healed people. I just meant that you know other people who've are going through it.
Yes.
And perhaps share some of the things that they found useful. I'm not asking you to say I'm a Lyme expert or anything like that, but just some of their strategies, which may or may not work for other people, but it's just, Yeah,
I think it's different for everyone, depending on and that's one of the things that I think makes Lyme so insidious and so hard to deal with and obviously diagnose. You see an immunologist, you could see a neurologist. If there are, I think those are probably the two big ones. I have sent many people with Lyme complaints to acupuncture, to my acupuncturist, and since in the last 30 years and all the different business networking groups that I've been in, I have connections with a lot of different alternative medical people, as does my husband, because that's what he does. So I think, I can, there's lysine, there are a number of that. Well, and actually this could be helpful. There's the thing that I've been on for the last year is, and you can get it on Amazon, is a nutrient called PEA, like P. I can't tell you that's some long word. But if people are having arthritic responses to, or have had, like I have, a joint response, an inflammatory response to Lyme, I would definitely recommend that. For years, I was also on a German enzyme nutrient called Wobenzyme, which you can also get on Amazon. I like to think that helped keep me not in a high level of chronic pain. But again, I wouldn't presume, and it's not like I have conversations all the time, especially anymore, because it's just so much a part of my life. It's not like I have conversations all the time with people who have Lyme. But I think those are a couple ideas. And frankly, I sound like I'm doing this big advertisement for acupuncture, and I guess I am. Regardless of your symptoms, the great thing about acupuncture is that it is so holistic. So if you're having a neurological response, if you're having an arthritic response, fatigue, whatever it is, acupuncture really addresses all the systems in your body. And there was one time early on when I was going to see my acupuncturist, and I had the flu, and I just felt miserable. I had a fever. I don't know, for some reason I didn't take a cab. Maybe didn't feel like I had the money to do it. But I got to her office, and she said, and I said, I feel really awful. Don't get too close. I have this flu. And she said, oh, I'll put in a couple extra needles. I got off of her table, after the half hour or so, and I typically would fall asleep because it was just so restful. And the paper on the table was drenched in sweat because of those extra needles she had put in that broke my fever. So I don't know if that's helpful for anyone, but it's a tricky to answer because there are so many ways that Lyme can manifest itself.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that from a perspective in terms of your recovery, you found acupuncture useful, and also you've done some research on things that are good for you to eat that can reduce the impact on yourself. And we're not saying, because this is not a medical show, we're not saying that this is a solution to everyone.
Right.
What about what kept you so positive? How did you do that?
That's just who I am. I think that kind of comes in your DNA. I always remember this. Some guy in high school told me I was depressing to be around because I was always so cheerful. That was a really long time ago. It's just my makeup, and I think it helps to be surrounded by people who uplift you. Certainly my kids were a good distraction, My husband, has always been incredibly supportive around that. And he was actually a great source of just one idea after another. And I continue to this day. There's cold laser treatment and ozone treatment. There's all kinds of alternative treatments. And I still see the I got to see the orthopedist in the next year or so. I was going every 7 years because nothing would change with my knee. But he said, you should be coming more frequently than that. So I think it's really, I do some form of meditation every day. It's self-care. And that's probably the cornerstone of my coaching practice, is really getting people to think about what nourishes them on every level, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, looking at that four-legged stool, that four-pointed crown of self-care. I really feel like if you're taking care of yourself in all of those ways, then everything, including a crippling thing like Lyme, just gets easier to manage, if you've got that foundation in place.
Way to summarize that. Thank you, Deborah. That was very helpful. I am literally speechless. I'm looking at the clock and it's like the end of our show already. It just flew by. Deborah, I'd like to spotlight you again and just ask you, you shared so many wonderful nuggets of information and given us a lot of hope and things to think about. But for someone else who's been diagnosed or thinks they might have Lyme disease, what advice or direction might you give them?
So much has changed, obviously, in the last 30 years since I was diagnosed. If you suspect it, I would certainly immediately see a Western doctor, get your diagnosis, find out what they say. But then I would really encourage you to look into some of these other alternative treatments. And then depending on the symptoms, I've given you a couple that I use because my symptoms are arthritic versus neurological. I would always recommend acupuncture for something like this. It's literally saved my life.
Thank you very much, Deborah. It's been a pleasure meeting you. Thank you for making the time and for joining our show. And remember, you can go over to Dr. Jacalyn LLC on YouTube and you can watch the show there. Wonderful. Deborah, what's a great way for people to get in touch with you?
Well, we've been scrolling across the bottom. My website, spiritedliving.com, is a good spot. I'm on LinkedIn, but I have tons of people there, but I'm more on Facebook and Instagram. I do full moon meditations that are on the phone. I do a lot of stuff that are distance. Even my new moon circles, which for 20 years have been live, obviously for the last year have been new moon Zoom circles. So yeah, check that out and reach out to me and about Lyme or anything else. I'm really happy to support anybody on this journey. Thank you, Deborah. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Come back and see us again on this or any other show that we have. Would love to. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Doctor Who, that was terrific. We learned a lot of good information. I did watch a reality TV show where one of the stars kind of gave an inside perspective of what it was like, and it got to be so bad she actually had to leave the show. So I'm glad that Deborah doesn't have that situation. Where can people reach out to you, Doctor Who?
So yes, if you want to connect with me, just connect with me on Instagram. It's Ben Chai Official, and LinkedIn. It's Ben Chai. The person in the picture looks like me, and if you're in a podcast and not listening, watching on a video, just put my name in Google. The top few pages there, they all lead back to my connections. So thank you so much, Dr. J. It was a shame, that we're ending so quickly because there was so much you had in common with Deborah, with the whole yoga stuff and how she's used that to help meditate and focus on peaceful things. So definitely. Yeah.
That's why I said we need to have her back on another show, which we'll definitely do. We are going to close out for today. We have a brand new show coming up right after this. It's called An Audience with Celebrity Psychic Gemma. And what I love so much, I interviewed Gemma on the Celebrate Great Britain, the Royally Rich show. met her there, followed up with her, and she is so adamant about having this be authentic that she has no idea who the guests are. I'm the only person who knows who the guests are today, as well as the guests, and they're not allowed to contact her. There's been nothing on social media, so I'm looking forward to doing this show for the first time. Episode 1, guys. So it's coming up in literally 19 minutes. So I will bid you adieu and go get changed and be back for the next show. Dr. Who, thank you as always. A pleasure seeing you today twice. And we'll see you shortly for an audience with Celebrity Psychic Gemma. Bye, everyone. Bye, Deborah.
Bye. Bye, Deborah. Bye, Dr. J.